I love you.
Welcome back, Couch Potatoes, to a special episode, another threesome, celebrating Black History Month. We're in the month of February. We're a couple weeks in now, but here we are. We wanted to do our part. You know, there's so little that we as white men can do except for call attention to the struggle still going on.
We try to pick 3 films that highlight that struggle. I feel like our country, at least, you know, we put up that we try to take this month to look back, especially on those civil rights leaders and all the different steps of the struggle of our fellow citizens. And that struggle still goes on. So I think it is very important for anyone to do what they can. And I mean, I don't think anything we do is enough, probably. But this is something. I hope that it, helps somebody look at the issue differently.
At the very least, it helps us, you and I specifically, in how we perceive it. All 3 movies that we watched today were kind of still really hard to watch because we just saw last year that they're still very prevalent in our society. Yeah, it is.
I think I have told my friends this, and it is an ignorant white perspective, I would say, that when I was growing up, it just seemed like everything was good. And maybe that was the area I grew up in as well. But, things seem to have, and you learn about the civil rights movement in school. And from my perspective, it was like, okay, yeah, but things are not like that anymore, and that's good.
Or at the very least, they were getting better.
Yeah. And I grew up in a very rural school, and there really weren't very many black people in our school. So that's probably why I didn't see the issue as it truly is. Yeah, this year was definitely an eye-opener. I definitely have, had my eyes opened throughout my undergrad and stuff like that, I would say. But there's always room to learn. And I feel like I had a lot of growth just by watching these movies. And I hope that, this is received as respect for black people and people of color's struggle. Yeah, that's our hopes going in. This is a podcast about movies and TV. I'm the Faceless Leo.
And I'm the Green Traveler. And today we're going to talk Harriot, the Butler, and Selma. Not precisely in that order, but whatever. But we figured these were, and we have another threesome coming later in the week, I think, or later in the month.
Yeah.
Again, centering around events we think are important to remember, to hold still in memory. And we thought all 3 of these movies. One, I hadn't seen. Let me think. I don't think I had seen Selma when it came out. I know I've seen clips from it before, but this was the first time fully watching it for me. But I hadn't seen Harriet.
I don't think I've seen any of these before.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen The Butler. I feel like I had because there are things that I remembered, but at the same time, it is a historical piece, so I could just be remembering those bits in other movies. Not that it's the precise same, but you know what I mean, like those characters being portrayed as they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's just start with Harriet. Came out 2019, and obviously about
last year.
Yeah, I almost said last year. I'm like, no, we're in 2021 now. We've escaped. We're on to better times. Hopefully. We both had to add that in there. Yeah. That knock on wood too. Toss some salt over the back.
Yeah.
Harriet is about Harriet Tubman, played magnificently by Cynthia Erivo.
Yeah.
Or Arrivo, sorry. And it's directed by Casey Lemons, who co-wrote it with some other guy. And it's, it just follows Harriet's life from young adulthood to just before Civil War. So,
a clip during.
Good chunk.
There's a
clip. There is. I want to get into that later. I wish they had been more epic with this approach, because her life is epic and her journey is epic, and they kind of just like fall into biopic territory, and they just tell the tale. It's just a kind of like a history lesson, which isn't a problem. It's a really great movie. I do love this movie. I just wish that it had been more, not embellishing, but more epic. Give it a grander scale, a bigger budget, go into her Civil War.
Her accomplishments in the Civil War.
And beyond, she did so much for women's suffrage and everything.
Maybe they should have a part 2.
That's what I'm getting at. If they literally just turn this into a Lord of the Rings style trilogy, she has that kind of a life, you can do it. And I want to see that, because it would be freaking awesome.
So they should edit, when they do that, they should go back and edit this, just chop off that end bit so that it can be in the other 2 movies.
Yeah. And keep Cynthia Erivo. She dove into this role, and it's amazing. But it goes from her, it's just in her, I wanted to try to find out the years, but it's more like the 30s and 40s, 1830s, 1840s, I believe. She's still a slave in the beginning. Her husband is a free man, but her mom was a slave who was supposed to be freed by I can't remember his name. I didn't even write their names down. I didn't like the family so much. I hated them.
Brodess or Brode.
Brodess.
The
Brodess.
The son's name is Gideon, but I do not remember what the father's name is.
But the father was supposed to release Harriet's mother
years ago.
Yeah, years ago, before she turned, I think, 56, and now she's like 57 and still enslaved. And Harriet and her husband approach Mr. Brodess to get her freedom. And, he tears up the papers that, they had a lawyer, they bought a lawyer to look over their situation, and he gave them a letter saying that, yes, you should be given your freedom. And he tore that letter up, and he's like, no, you're still... He denied her. He's
like, this means nothing.
Yeah. And then Harriet gets a vision. It's a historical, fact that she believes she got visions from God.
Right.
William Still, played by Leslie Odom Jr. Amazingly, he played Aaron Burr in Hamilton.
That's what I recognize him from.
Yeah, he's a super good actor. Yeah, I really liked his performance. But he interpreted her, when she tells him that she has visions from God, he interpreted that as brain damage from her skull fracture as a kid. And I'm sure many people would have interpreted that. But she has, in this movie, it takes them as premonitions. She believes she speaks with God, she walks with God. And this movie interprets it as she sees the future, kind of.
Right. It gets her out of trouble a little bit.
Yeah, and saves a lot of lives. And she sees that her master, Mr. Brodess, is going to die, and that she's going to be sold south because the family's, the farm's not doing so hot, the family's losing money, they're trying to, they're constantly selling slaves to make ends meet. Oh, woe is them.
Yeah, right. Jeez. Oh, man. Those scenes where they were complaining about their finances and shit, I was just so fucking pissed.
I get putting that in the movie. It definitely, it speaks to the times, and right. it's important to, and it helped vilify them, which was really important. But man, I hated how much screen time that family got.
Yeah, for real.
Such bastards.
As soon as you hated them, you didn't want to see them anymore. But Gideon is definitely throughout the movie. He is portrayed as the main villain. But that's because the story in this film is Harriet, who some of her family members call her Minty because that's what she was known as.
She was born Araminta.
Araminta,
Araminta Ross, I believe.
I believe you're right. And I think that's something that I knew when we did the studies in history class, but I had totally forgotten that. So when they first started the film, they kept on calling her Minty, but I couldn't quite hear it, so I thought they were calling her Missy. And so until I turned on the subtitles, the Ross family and all of the cast that are on the plantation, they speak in a pretty, all of them very well in a dialect of the time, and it was just a little difficult to hear that one particular word. I was like, what are they calling her? Because it did not quite sound like Missy either. And then after you hear it with the word there, then you know, okay, I know, I can hear it now. That's just how my ears work, I guess. Maybe
I was gonna say I can't speak to that. Yeah, I have bad hearing. I'm partially deaf in my left ear, so I always watch things with subtitles on unless I'm at the movie theaters.
There you go.
So I didn't have that issue because I had them on from the beginning, so I can't speak to that.
Well, anyhow, that was not a critique of the film by any means. That was just me not understanding. I thought they did great on the dialect and speech work in this film. They on all sides, like the accents. I don't know if the cast who played the family were Southern or not, being Joe Alwyn, who played Gideon Brode or Brodus. I'm having a hard time recalling those family members' name because I did not.
I was gonna say I'm fairly certain it was Brodus.
Okay. Like you, I really hated that they kept on focusing on them. But like you said, it's important to be villainized for this story. Otherwise, the story doesn't work. Otherwise, you might sympathize with what they're doing, and you don't want that.
And in this movie goes links to make sure that you don't sympathize with the Brodus family.
Definitely.
They're cruel bastards from the get-go.
Yeah.
And I just wish that there was so little time. I just wanted it to be more expansive. I wanted this to go further into
there's a lot more life left.
Yeah, because from there they just kind of montage through her life, because once she finds out she's going to be sold, she escapes to Philadelphia, and that journey in and of itself is impressive. With little help, she has some help from a local priest of of her town, but that's like it. She makes it all the way to Philadelphia, which is like I don't know how many miles. It was ridiculous how far she traveled. It's incredible how when she gets there, like you see it in William Still's face that he hasn't seen this kind of persistence, this strength in somebody before, because her story it's incredible to him. And then she's so steadfast because she wants her family with her. She wants her husband with her. That's where she gets her name, Harriet Tubman, also, is William Still asks for what name she wants to be written down. And he said, you don't have to go by your slave name given to you by your ex-master.
Right.
You're a free woman now. You can choose your own name. And so she chooses Harriet after her mother and Tubman after her husband. And I don't know if that's precisely historically accurate. I'm not a historian, but I feel like this film was fairly accurate. But from there, because she wants her family there, and William Still, who is a member of the Underground Railroad, he refuses to lend her that aid because it's just dangerous. They have to be careful with how they do things. Otherwise, they're all going to be caught, and there's going to be no continued help throughout. So he's reluctant to help her because of how much danger it imposes.
Yeah. So
she just does it herself.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not gonna stop saving slaves because it's too far. That's something she says. That's later.
That's later. Yeah, that's when they get to Canada. That's when they have to take them even further. But at this point in time, she's like, I want my family with me, and if you're not gonna help me, I'm gonna do it myself. And so she goes down there to bring her husband back initially, just her husband. But she finds out that, again, her husband was a freed man who thought she had died in her escape. So after a year or so had passed, he had moved on. He had found another wife who was also freed, and they had started a family. And so Harriet feels betrayed, but again, she gets another vision from God that she can save some of her brothers,
right,
or some of her other family members too, and so she brings them with her instead, and that begins this long kind of montage scene, which again I was slightly annoyed by, not really because they handle it really well. I would rather they have focused on these missions that she was doing, because she did like 13 missions, I believe it said, and saved more than 70 slaves. And the movie just kind of montages those. It just makes them like traumatic moments where it's, it's just them running through the woods with dogs chasing after them, while a musical score that I don't feel like quite fit the tone of this movie played in the background. I don't want to complain about the music because it is a good score in and of itself. It just doesn't feel like it matched the tone of the movie. So it's that's where I'm at with this movie, is like I really enjoyed it, and it really did a great job at showing us this journey that she went through, like everything that she accomplished, and how powerful of a figure she is. I just feel like they could have made it more. They could have elongated a lot of these moments and like dove further into her accomplishments.
Yeah,
made it more epic. I know I keep saying that, but that's just where I'm at with it. Is I wanted these to be bigger movies.
You wanted more.
Yeah, and then there's I can't remember the act, but there's some kind of act that's passed that makes it legal for. Thank you. That makes it legal for the southern plantation owners to come and collect their slaves again, who have journeyed into freedom in the north. And so that's when the Underground Railroad moves Harriet Tubman up to Canada for her safety. And while in Canada, she's like, no, you're not going to stop me. I'm going to keep going back there. I don't care. That's where she brings up that line where it's like, just because we have further to go now, it doesn't mean I'm going to stop walking. It's like, I'm going to keep going.
Right. That, I think that was a great highlighted moment of the danger of political appeasement. And so I do feel like this movie, if it came out this year, I think it might have been even more impactful, but it's definitely aptly timed when it came out. That we got to be pretty hard set and try not to compromise with policies that have the potential to hurt people that are marginalized. I think that we got to be careful.
I agree.
Because otherwise shit like this happens, where the law where the law could have been your salvation is just kind of ripped away. But I think we're moving forward. I do. I hope so anyways.
It's just slow progress, but we are hopefully taking the right steps. Still a long fight ahead.
I think so.
But I guess just to close on Harriet, if you're ready. I know we're on a bit of a time crunch, people.
I do want to say, I heard recently that she might be on the $20 bill soon. That might be in the works. I think that's pretty.
That's the only problem is that's been in the works for many years, and a previous administration, I won't say his name, dumped that plan. And I work with money, so I've heard questions. People are like, well, won't that mess things up? No, it won't mess anything up. You're just going to have a different face on the bill, and it's going to be nicer to look at.
Yeah.
Like, it is a middle finger to have Andrew Jackson on the 20 because he didn't believe in paper money and, hated it. So it's kind of funny. But I'm also tired of looking at his fucking face.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I it's nothing. It's not going to really affect anybody's lives, and it's another thing of too little, too late. But it's a nice thing. It's a nice step.
Yeah, I think that it's a move that should be done, though. Like we're still glorifying this guy as our founding father, and he just did some horrible, horrible things.
He's stupid.
Yeah,
but
Harriet.
I give Harriet 3.5 stars. Cool. Great film. It's very entertaining, and again, I've mentioned it before on the podcast. I'm an atheist, and the focus on her Christianity is the focus I want Christianity to have. I want when I look at Christianity, the qualities I like are the qualities of Jesus Christ. You know, I like that idea of actually wanting to help people out in need. And that's what she uses her faith through, is to help all these people. You know, she always looks to God to help her, to point her in the right path, and he always points her in the right path, possibly because she's a genuinely good soul.
Yeah,
so,
I guess she's a good person. Yes.
Yeah, so, you know, that focus on her faith, I really enjoyed that in this movie, because it's a documented, you know, fact of her life, is how important that was to her.
Right.
And I really liked how they handled that and how they interpreted it. I think it made this film quite exciting at times.
Right.
But my only wish was I want 2 more films that go into the next 2 periods of her life, because they were equally as powerful.
For sure. So I think I'll go into my closing statement kind of based off of that. I thought it kind of lent to her legend a lot in this movie, and it almost kind of made the movie read like a folktale a little bit. And that might not be quite the right term, but it definitely seems like an American legend to me. And I think that if we could, you know, continue that kind of focus on these characters that are they're very powerful, you know, we could have a whole slew of new American legends to teach our children, that are positive and making actual changes around them. So I think that was a good add to the movie too. And I also think that this movie is a full-face movie. Yeah, I would like to see more of it too. I didn't think about, you know, giving this 2 more movies until you mentioned it, but I think that would work.
She lived into 1920s, or maybe like
1913.
Okay, yes, 1913. Like, she had a long life after this, you know. It's like, and this is just a very short period of her life during which she did many amazing things.
Right.
And in the next 60-some years, she does even more amazing things. Like, there's so much more to cover here. You know, I don't like that was just tiny blurbs to put in at the post credits. But that also reminds me, I wanted to shout out before we move on. I'm reading The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Great book. I'm only halfway through it right now, but it's about a young boy who is a slave who discovers he has an ability they called conductivity, which is just a teleportation kind of. He can teleport or transport through space, then, you know, not leaving the planet, of course, but just going from another location. But he becomes a member of the Underground Railroad, and that's cool. Because of that power, and it's implied, because they've mentioned where I'm at. I'm sure they'll probably go into it further in the book, but it's implied that he might end up meeting a character named Moses. So I'm really hoping that Harriet Tubman. Yeah, we didn't mention that Harriet Tubman was called Moses when she worked on the Underground Railroad. Because
she
led her people to freedom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the newspapers were calling her that because of the large exodus, like the sheer amount of slaves that would go missing at a time. And they all believed that she was some kind of abolitionist in blackface, and I think that it, like, just the ignorance of that. Oh, it must have been a white man. It must have been. It
is, as you said, it's very ignorant. And she never lost a slave. That's another thing, is everybody that she led to freedom made it to freedom.
That's pretty impressive.
That's just, it's just incredible. It's incredible. And, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, if you want to show me proof of a God, that's one area where I'm just like, this woman who walked with God, who claimed to walk with God, was this, you know, remarkable. There you go. There's proof for me. You know, I see it.
Yeah.
I'm still an atheist, but I see it.
I can see where it might be possible.
Through people like her, I can definitely believe it.
Well, that's awesome, I think.
But and I just wanted to call out that book because it's a really good book, and I haven't finished it yet, so maybe it can go south from there. But right now, I'm fucking digging it.
Fuck
And
yeah.
I can't wait to read his wait to read his Black Panther work because he also worked on Black Panther. So.
Oh shit. Cool.
But moving on.
Yeah, let's move on to Selma.
Selma, Alabama.
So, in this movie, Dr. Martin Luther King, who is the main character of Focus, played by David. Help me say his last name so I am not.
Oh, it's just how it looks. Oyelowo.
Oyelowo. Oyelowo. Pardon me.
Yeah, I know we're both dyslexic, so
yeah,
it's hard to read a word and pronounce the word for us. But yeah.
Yeah. So
amazingly, and I want to say up front, this I'm remembering now that this was the one where it's like, why wasn't he part of the Oscars? Because he wasn't nominated for the Oscars in 2014 up against Eddie Redmayne and Michael Keaton. He wasn't. He didn't get the nomination.
He did amazing.
Totally deserved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, watching this, remembering those other two movies that we've talked about. Well, we haven't talked about Birdman, but someday. But we've talked about The Theory of Everything. I think this performance is so much better than Eddie Redmayne's, even though I still love Eddie Redmayne's.
Yeah,
but
I would totally agree.
My God.
I mean, from everything I had seen of Dr. King,
there was a moment.
I really just, I was able to just forget that he was an actor, and it was
right.
It was Dr. King.
There's a moment at the end where it's black and white news footage, and you're hearing a speech from Martin Luther King, and it's one of those like very last second shot kind of thing. So I thought it was just actual footage and actual microphone footage of Martin Luther King, and then they cut to real life, the film itself. They cut to the color and everything, and you see that it's just David Oyelowo, and I'm just like, holy fuck, you did this so well. Like he disappeared into this character.
Yeah,
he literally
really did. It's fucking brilliant. Yeah, honestly, the whole cast in this movie though did a fantastic job. It should have gotten plenty of awards.
I think it was nominated for Best Picture, and that was about it.
It should have been, because it was a very good picture.
And I think Ava DuVernay, the director, got a nomination. Maybe.
Okay.
Again, also highly deserved.
Yeah, definitely.
She killed it.
So, in this, Dr. King is looking. He's already been a leader of the civil rights movement, and he has already gone to Birmingham, and now he's moving on to Selma. Birmingham was the segregation issue, if I'm not mistaken, and this was now black people are legally allowed to vote, but some southern states, in particular in Selma and in Alabama, they are coming up with rules to make it extremely difficult for black people to vote.
Oprah Winfrey goes, I can't remember her character's name, sadly.
Annie Lee Cooper.
Thank you. Annie Lee Cooper goes to vote, and the guy starts asking her these just ridiculous questions. He asks her to recite the part of the Constitution, which she does. Then he asks her how many county judges there are in the state of Alabama, which she tells him the exact number there are. And then he asks her to name all of them, and then that's when she can't do that because it's there's like 67 county judges. Yeah. Then he's just like, haha, I got you, denied. And it's just it was a good scene, and I like that she's one of those characters they focus on because you watch her accompany Martin Luther King Jr. on these marchers and throughout these events.
So that is like the basic plot of the movie. It is looking at that particular event, and so at some point Dr. King gets arrested, and I believe while he's in jail, some other people in his group march, and they get beaten so badly. I believe that's the one they call Bloody Sunday.
I don't think he was in jail when that happened.
Well, he wasn't there.
I believe. Yeah, he wasn't there. I think because of him and his wife were having personal issues because the death threats were getting to Coretta King.
Right.
There's just so many of them, and eventually that does take a toll on you. And so they had an argument, and he wanted to call off the march for a day, but they were like, we can't.
Yeah.
They won't let us have the next day, so they marched, I think, without him. I don't remember if that was specifically the reason. I just remember that was like the scene right before it.
Right.
And I think that's why he wasn't there. But
yeah.
But John Lewis was there, and man, like who is the actor who played John Lewis? Do you have that pulled up? He's sadly a congressman who passed away last year. Powerful figure. You see him at the march at Bloody Sunday, where he gets hit by I believe a policeman or a state trooper, one and the same, really.
Yeah,
but
he's played by, it might be Stephen James or Stephen James. I'm sorry,
yeah,
Mr. James.
Yeah, great job by him. Like, I mean, you have this powerful figure who at the time was still alive when this movie came out, and so I can only assume John Lewis was pleased with his representation if he watched this film.
Sure, but yeah, I hope he did get to see it.
Yeah, and he's the one who led everybody back to the church after
right.
the march went south when the troopers attacked and just started beating everybody ruthlessly, and
in cavalry form too. Like,
yeah,
some of them were on horseback. It's crazy.
And was that when they chased Jimmy Lee Jackson?
Yes, they chased him to. Played by Lakeith Stanfield. He was also in Get Out. He and I believe his grandfather and maybe his mother. I'm not sure.
I think it was his mom.
They were chased down to a restaurant.
Yeah. They ran into a restaurant and they were just trying to hide from the police because the police were still chasing all the people who were at that march. And a state trooper just like went in there and started beating his grandfather and then shot him.
Yeah.
And killed him. And that sadly still did not spur the president to, make decisions. So Martin had to, they remarched. They went back to the bridge with a bunch of priests and other religious figures. Martin put out a call to
to all clergymen. Yeah. Just like, you guys know what's going on is not right. Please come march with us.
And they all went back to the bridge, and the state troopers actually stood down. They backed off, and Martin. They all prayed, and Martin Luther King Jr. didn't think that was. I don't remember what his motivation was, but he something about it cautioned him, and he turned around and they left.
In the film, they're all complaining to him a little bit later, and he's like, I really thought it might be a trap.
Yeah,
because they stood aside. If they were gonna just let him go through, why even be there at all?
Yeah,
so I don't disagree with his tactics. I think some people in the room felt that he didn't want to do it unless there was threat that people could get hurt. But that wasn't,
and also
his motive at all.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't think that was part of it either. But again, just like with Harriot, this film focuses on, Martin Luther King Jr. was a reverend,
right? And
his faith was very important to him. And this film again does a great job to show his touch with faith, how it helps him make decisions. And he prayed to God at that moment, and for whatever reason he believed that God was telling him that wasn't at the time, and so they backed off. They went back to the church, and I don't remember if it was that night or the next day or a couple weeks later, but one of the clergymen, a white man who was there, got beaten up by two thugs and two white supremacists, and just because he was there, just because he was with the marchers, and that finally sadly is what spurred motion. A white man was murdered, and that's when the president in this film put forth actions to finally stop the events that were continuing to get worse and worse.
I would like to mention that Tom Wilkinson plays LBJ, and honestly, I thought it was an amazing performance of LBJ.
Yeah.
I do like the guy who plays him in the Butler too.
Yeah.
But this
Liev
guy,
Schreiber.
he Wilkinson, he brings all the crassness that is of the legend of LBJ,
Yeah.
but he also does care about what at some level he cares what Martin Luther King Jr. says, but on another level he's like, but I think this is more important. And Dr. King just keeps on trying to tell him, no, dude, this is important right now.
Yeah, he's lost. LBJ in this film is lost in the politics of it.
Yeah.
Whereas, MLK is trying to tell him the reality of the world. He's like, it's not just politics. These are lives. It's more than your election. It's about your legacy. And I think it was interesting. I want to say before I mention this criticism that I do not share this criticism. I wanted to touch on this, that the only, I don't look too much into other critics' reviews before we review it. Right. I just wanted to see what many people were saying. And one criticism, the only one that I saw across the board, was people were like, they vilified LBJ so much. He was staffers and everything were like, he wasn't like as obstructionist as this movie makes him represent. I don't know the history. I haven't read biographies. I do think it's amusing to note that the one criticism people had was with the portrayal of the white guy in the story.
Yeah, for real. What the hell?
Like, we still have such a ways to go, people. Like, that's very prevalent in all these people's reviews. I'm just like, it's a great performance, and it definitely, in my opinion, it didn't take away from the movement. No. And that was what was important about it, was it showed how politics in itself, which is what LBJ represents in the film, was obstructionist. So even if LBJ wasn't, like, again, I don't know the history, even if he wasn't, he represented the politics of the situation, and that was obstructionist.
And like I was saying about appeasement, at this time, LBJ was really concerned about starting another civil war. And he had to come around. So without showing that negative side of him, where he was pretty much ignoring the problem, trying to ignore the problem. Yeah. And I like the scene where he's talking to J. Edgar Hoover about ruining Dr. King. And it's like he was willing to step to that level to get King off his back. So I think we have to recognize that he's not like this savior character. He's just in the position of power to actually be able to do something about it. And it takes a while for him to get there, to be like, okay, yes, I have to do something about this.
And I so respect this film for making that decision, because as you said, it did it really well. It delivered it so well.
Thanks so.
And I also agree. I think Tom Wilkinson, who amusedly, there's like 4 actors who played major characters in this who are British. Yeah. Tom Wilkinson is British, and so is David Oyelowo. And so I think it's hilarious that they played all these important characters.
And really well.
Maybe that's why the Oscars snubbed them. Well, actually, no. Eddie Redmayne. Never mind. Eddie Redmayne was also. Guy. I'll delete that. Anyways.
Yeah. What else is there to talk about? I mean, I feel like there's a lot to gush over about this film.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and again, props to Ava DuVernay. Like, this film shares a lot of similarities with the film we're going to talk about next, The Butler.
Right.
For instance, Lee Daniels was originally set to direct this, but he turned it down for The Butler. And so they got Ava DuVernay instead, and Ava DuVernay killed it. It's incredible performances from everybody, great directing. Like, she brought this story to life. Like, she really captured these events. And he's another character that I don't think they need to make a huge series out of this, but I think there's so many important moments in his life that you can make big movies about, like this, like Selma.
Right.
Like, I mean, even just doing a biopic on him that's an epic would also be amazing. But
yeah, for sure.
You could also do just individually handpick little moments of his life and make big movies out of them.
For
and
sure.
She killed it. Great job here.
Yeah, and the next film also shares David Oyelowo and Oprah Winfrey. So that's kind of cool.
And Cuba Gooding Jr.
Oh, Cuba was in this movie?
Yeah, he played the lawyer.
I remember now. Fred Gray. It was what is the man's real life name. I was going to say character's name, but these are representing real people.
Yeah. It's also got Giovanna Ribisi, who's fun.
Well, there you go. But Oprah and David, they're family members with Butler Gaines. What I know he's Lewis Gaines, but I can't actually remember that. Force Ridiculous. We should do the closing statement for Selma. It's a full-faced movie. Fantastic movie. This one, can really pull at your heartstrings, guys. Oh man, the scene where the state troopers run in, they're they sent in the cavalry and all that part, man, it is heart-wrenching. It is hard to watch, but I think it is important to expose yourself to things like that, to try to get an understanding of what Black people in this country have gone through. That's what I have to say about this movie. It definitely opened my eyes more than they were. I already felt like I was getting pretty close to understand, but we'll never understand. That's the thing.
No.
We'll never fully understand.
No.
So I plan to go forward and keep on exposing myself to things like this to just keep perspective. And that's what I really took away from this movie. And also just what an example to follow in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
And to go off that scene hit hard for me because, again, it parallels events that happened last year. We're not there yet. We have so much further to go. And so watching that scene was very emotional because, it's hard to believe America's been like this forever. I mean, we have, but it's just, it's hard to look at it and see the truth and realize that, there's so much work that needs to be done and to realize that for the most part, I've been very quiet and ignorant, and now it's just now I gotta go out there and help if I can.
Whatever I can do. Somebody tell me
exactly.
If there's something I can do, and I will do.
Yeah, and that this movie definitely brought that to the forefront, where it's just I want you see it and you are inspired by what he accomplished through nonviolence, through his marches, through his speeches and everything, and again, amazing performance by David Oyelowo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I give it 4 stars. Absolutely highly recommend. Go out there, watch it if you haven't. Let's move on to The Butler.
Heck yeah.
I've already mentioned The Butler is directed by Lee Daniels. Great job again. He took I believe it's based off of a novel. Oh, no, sorry. It's based off of a real life story. Eugene Allen, who was a White House butler from 1952 to 1986. And this movie does embellish his life. It takes the example and makes a fictionalized story out of it, and it does so in a very very wonderful, very blockbuster Oscar. What was the word when you're trying?
Oscar bait, I think. Is
Oscar
what you're
bait,
looking
yeah.
for, but
Thank
I don't
you,
know. I don't know if that's really quite a fair assessment, but I mean... Yeah.
It's not, but it is more of a blockbuster Oscar baity film than the other two definitely were.
I'll say.
And it's and it has that epic feel because it spans, it's a saga.
So
it spans so many different presidential eras.
So much stuff happens in this movie.
Yeah. And, a lot of stuff that happens in Selma is actually covered very briefly in The Butler.
Right.
But to get into it, it's about just a man, Lewis Gaines, played by Forrest Whitaker, who is
Cecil Gaines. Cecil Gaines.
Cecil Gaines.
Yeah.
Lewis is his son, played by David Oyelowo. That's right.
Yep.
Cecil Gaines is the butler, played by Forrest Whitaker, and he starts off as a butler at a hotel, I believe, and a hiring manager or something at the White House sees him and really likes how he handles his work,
Right.
and so approaches him when they have need, which they mention, it's very hard to become, part of the staff at the White House because people just stay on there for life. They just stay there until they retire,
Right.
because it's not a bad job. You kind of, in his mind, that's what when he's young, he actually does like his job. He takes pleasure in being a butler, and that was was a great position for him. It was like he had an in. He got inside information. He had good friends in there, friends with Cuba Gooding Jr., who's another butler in the White House.
He's not supposed to say anything about what's going on, but he gets to know what's going on in his country, and he gets to and he feels it especially strongly at first that this is how he gets to serve his country.
Yeah, because he gets to watch how all the presidents respond to it,
right?
And for some of those presidents, he has a somewhat of a connection to where he can help them, through some of their decision making, where he can encourage them or poke them in the right path for change.
Yeah, I do think though that Cecil kind of sits and waits for the president to come to them, though. But he gets more and more confident as the film goes on that he has a voice that might be helpful for the presidency.
Yeah,
that's how I feel.
And all the acting's great. But that's kind of the summary of the story, I guess, is just you watch him age through the presidential eras. As new presidents come in, all of them miraculously portrayed. Like Dwight D. Eisenhower is played by Robin Williams, and I did not know that. And I almost cried seeing him. I was like, "Oh my God, he's so good!"
This had to be right before he passed.
Wait, was he Dwight or was he Harriet?
He was Dwight Eisenhower.
Okay.
And then then they had Cyclops as JFK. James Marsden.
Oh, that's good. And John Cusack played Richard Nixon, which pulled me out of the film.
That was strange.
It's not
it's not that he did a bad job. It's John Cusack.
His voice was good. Voice was good. He did not look like they gave him a fake nose. Well, maybe not. Maybe that is John Cusack's nose.
I don't know. It looked quite a bit like Nixon's nose.
Right, that's what I was thinking. It's a weird decision, but what's not a weird decision is Alan Rickman as Robert Reagan.
I don't know how it works. It works so well.
It works. It really does. And also, again, just like with Selma, one criticism I kept seeing was Ronald Reagan wasn't portrayed. He was kind of made a villain. I'm just like,
he kind of was though.
It's like there's some moments where it's like, come on, guys.
I think
that's not what.
My takeaway from this movie on Ronald Reagan's character was that he was a nice person, but had some not great policies, pretty bad policies, really. Personal opinion, and from the perspective of this film, because Cecil liked him, but he also did there was that scene where he was talking about the South Africa stuff, apartheid, and you could just see Cecil in the background I can't believe he's saying that. Yeah,
because Cecil. Yeah, he does, as you said, he kind of likes this guy. He doesn't seem like he's as bad as they kind of have. They have Liev Schreiber play LBJ, and also from X-Men, Sabretooth.
Oh shit! I did not recognize that as Liev Schreiber. I did
All
not.
right, are there more X-Men? Should we take more time to try to figure out if there's more X-Men in this film?
No. We'll keep on going. That's
But no, there's a
though.
moment though where like they show how crass LBJ is, where he's just taking a shit and he has the door open.
Yeah.
And he's talking with his advisors, and Cecil has to stand there to to wait on him, and it's just like that. Again, I don't know anything about LBJ, but that's the humor of this film at times. Is like it shows how crass or emotional these presidents could be at at certain moments. It kind of it's looking at them at the same time as looking at the issues. And
I won't repeat the line, but there's something that when LBJ gives this speech on television, the same speech that's in Selma, it definitely has a lot less weight to that scene in this film than in Selma, because that was what they were trying to accomplish in Selma. This was just like at the very middle of the film. I really liked what Cuba Gooding Jr. said. I'm not going to repeat the line once again, but that cracked me up so much.
He was quite inappropriate throughout this whole film.
Yeah,
and I loved it. I think that's my overall opinion on the film, though. Is it's a really good look at history, but just like with Harriet Tubman, it feels kind of like a history lesson. And less like just a film, just like a story.
Sure.
And it's not, it's not a bad thing. It's a great film. I don't know if we're ready for closing statements, but it is a great film.
Yeah, I would say, I really enjoyed watching this film. I think what we're missing, what kind of really is the meat and potatoes plot-wise of this story is his family life.
Oh. Yeah.
With Oprah.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
And David. Gloria Gaines and Louis Gaines and Charles Gaines is Louis, pretty young in life, gets involved in the movement. He's going off to college and almost immediately just joins the movement, and that's what he does. I think there is a great character in Louis Gaines. His son keeps on putting himself in danger for the movement. And this just continually pisses off Cecil because he was always taught, keep your head down. And that's how you survive. And he thinks his son's being reckless.
Yeah, and he worked so hard to achieve a job that he thought, in a way protected his family.
Right. Yeah.
And so to watch his son just completely go outside of that protection, and like he was part of the sit-ins. And they show the trauma that they prepare themselves for.
Right.
They attack each other, like they all attend these like meetings in basements and everything where they attack each other and ridicule each other just to prepare themselves for the emotional feeling of when people who actually mean them harm are yelling all these insults and offensive words at them, and even possibly punching them or hurting them. It's all about maintaining your composure and not reacting. Not getting violent, not giving them the satisfaction of covering this up. It's a nonviolent protest that if it turns violent, it's because they did it.
Right.
And this movie, I really enjoyed watching his son's story. Because of that, because you watch them prepare themselves, you watch what they're expecting, and it's emotional. It's powerful, to see that. But it does also feel more embellished and more cinematic than the other two, I would say.
Yeah, it definitely did have a this is a moviegoers feel to it than the other two, I'd say. Harriet did kind of have the feel of an action movie, but you're running for your life, so I think that's fair. I think the family dynamic was really interesting and really well played. I think David Oyelowo, it's hard for me to say more than a couple of times straight, and I apologize for that. I believe that he did fantastic in both of these films. They're completely different.
Yeah.
completely different.
Yeah.
It's funny because he gets to be in the room with the gentleman playing Dr. Martin Luther King for this movie, and Dr. King says something about black domestic workers and how they kind of were the first phase of equal rights because they were interacting and changing the opinions of people. And I thought that was pretty interesting. If it's something that MLK actually said, I don't know. Probably not. But it was interesting.
Yeah, that was another area. Is like, again, this is one of those films that, if I were to research it, I saw more questions brought up about the historical accuracy than the other two. So, like, I feel like they embellished things a little more in this film, so that might be one of those that's not. But I never think it hurts it because it feels like a lesson, and it never strays from that.
Right. You got to look at the purpose of the film. Mm-hmm. I did get confused because I did think it was all a true story when I was watching it, but
well, I mean, it definitely feels that way, and it's definitely, again, it's based off of a true story.
Right.
So a lot of it is pulled from reality. So it succeeded. Like that's a measure of success. And
I wonder why they chose to do that. I mean, did they not think that Eugene's Allen story was?
I mean, he was probably also still, maybe. I know that. I feel like I think I read that the childhood of Cecil Gaines that's presented in the film is far different than Eugene Allen. So it's like they might not have just thought it was as impactful because, the movie starts off with Cecil Gaines. His family works on a plantation in the early 20s, I believe, maybe before then. And his mom is raped and by the plantation owner or the plantation owner's son, something like that. And then that guy immediately shoots and kills his father. So it's like you see him go from that childhood, that tragic and awful childhood, to working at the White House and watching the civil rights movement progress through the 80s.
Yeah.
And
as
that
the
kind of a saga,
to the 80s, from the late 50s to the 80s.
Yeah. And as that saga, it's really well done. It's really entertaining and really, I mean, it feels like a history lesson, but that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that you can, the substitute teacher can come in and show this, and you get a lot of knowledge from it.
Right.
And it even looks into, I believe, doesn't his son join the Black Panther movement?
Yeah, they do say that Lewis joined
after
the Black Panther movement. Yeah, after
MLK's assassination.
After the assassination, and then he
and that's kind of what divides him and his father. That's like the final step almost for Cecil.
But before the disagreement with his father was before he got wind of that, because that's why he left in the movie. That's why Lewis left.
Yeah, his like him and his father there was a divide growing between them throughout the film, which I think is a really interesting and important thing to look at. I don't kind of want to spoil too much of that because I think that's what makes the film entertaining. As you said, it's the meat and potatoes of the film. Right. But that's the final moment is when his son comes home and he brings his girlfriend. He thinks it's his girlfriend. He thinks it's his girlfriend, and she's like, "No, we're just friends." But his father just feels so out of touch with what they're promoting versus what he's believed his whole life. And so watching him kind of just grow to accept his sons and his growing and the generation that's coming, just their wants, their needs, and respecting that his way doesn't mean the right way. There's many different ways to accomplish your goals, and he just felt out of touch with what his son wanted, and he was scared for him, and he let it divide them, and it's a beautiful story. I don't know how much of this I'm going to delete.
I think what you said was nice things, though. And I don't know. Are we? No, I really kind of want to talk about Gloria Gaines because I thought Oprah did a great job in this role. I honestly kind of liked Gloria more than Cecil, to be totally honest.
She had a more emotional story too, because she dealt with different demons than he was dealing with.
Definitely. Like, one of them is, why doesn't my husband want to spend time at home? And also, like, her boys, one went off to war, and one was fighting a war, against racism, and so she worried about them all the time, and so she becomes a drunk for part of the film, and part of her story is her overcoming that, and I think it's a great story. I think it's a really good story.
And also, this might be spoilers, but she has some infidelity, and it's overcoming that as well, because again, as you mentioned, her husband's working many late hours, many late nights at his job, and when he comes home, he can't tell her anything about it, and she's left out of the blue, and he's always promised to take her to the White House, but he never has yet, and it all just builds, and watching that dynamic unfold is just as entertaining as the rest of the film. There's a lot of good plot lines that are built throughout this film, and it handles them all well. It never feels bloated. I don't think it just it's very enjoyable and knowledgeable film.
It does feel long, though. I'll say that. Yeah. It does feel long,
that is
and
true.
I think it's just because of how jam-packed it is. Like, this definitely has an epic scope. I think you said so earlier.
Yeah, but they skipped Carter. I wanted
They
to see
did,
that.
yeah.
Carter.
I kind of was interested how he got along with Carter, and even Gerald.
I feel like he was. I feel like he was just a good guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know too much about Carter, but he seemed like a pretty nice guy. And I don't feel like they really cover him very much in school.
No.
But anyhow, closing statements about Lee Daniels, the Butler.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've made it, honestly. I think everything I said before was it, and I give it 3.5 stars. I definitely recommend going out and checking out all 3 of these films. They're all definitely completely worth it.
All full-faced films for me as well. I did enjoy the storyline of the Butler. So, who wins? I think it was pretty clear for me that Selma takes my portion of the lion's share.
100% in agreement.
You agree?
The other 2 are great films.
Yeah.
But Selma moved me a lot. There were many
did.
moments where the tears were rolling.
It was just seemed a touch more impactful than the other 2. I think Harriot was probably a little bit closer than the Butler for me. I do wish that there was more to Harriet, like you said. I wish there was more to Selma too, but with the title, it's not about everything that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did. It's about this one event.
And it's magnificently done, and David Oyelowo's performance just pushed that above everything.
Yeah.
His performance versus the other 2 movies, just his performance alone, not even the movie itself, just his performance wins on Threesome.
Yeah.
It's so amazing.
Oh yeah, if we could just do the lead roles, I think he would still win. Well, okay, in that case, I think we're closing up. I want to ask you a question though. So for Harriet 2 and 3, pitch me some titles for Harriet 2 and 3.
Oh man. They just used Harriet for the first one.
I know. But see, so I think you could still use that, and the second one would be Harriet and the War. I think that could be.
Or Harriet the Spy.
Harriet the Spy is good.
I mean, she did. She did so much, and she liberated a lot of. I mean, there's a title card at the end that I think it said she saved or brought 700 slaves to freedom in one sacking of a city or something. I can't remember. That's what I'm saying. I want to see the Civil War movie because I feel like she did so much during that they just made it a title card at the end. And it made me super interested because, again, I'm reading that one book, so I'm just like, oh, I can't wait until he meets Moses. Like, that's going to be great when I want to see this guy's take on her. And
I hope you're right. I hope that's how it turns out.
Yeah, it'd be fun. I haven't looked anything up on this book because I want to, I don't like spoiling books for me.
Right.
Because I still have hundreds of pages to go, and if I know the ending, what's the motivation?
Exactly.
Jesus.
So for the last one, this is my pitch for Harriot 3 is Harriot Suffragette.
Or Harriet Rise of the Woman.
Yeah. All right. I think that's our show for today. I've been the Faceless Leon.
I'm the Green Traveler.
Safe travels and good night. Green and Faceless on the Couch is a proud production of Fiction Works 19. If you want to learn more information about us, check us out on Facebook. You can also check out the Facebook and Instagram accounts of Fiction Works 19. Don't forget to like, follow, comment, or subscribe wherever you catch the show. Thank you all very much for listening.